Welcome to the CA Unified Infrastructure Management video, How to Diagnose Windows Connection Issues. In this video, I'll show you how to quickly diagnose some common firewall issues that can prevent communication between a primary and a secondary hub. You notice that one of your hubs is unreachable. You want to investigate and see if you can narrow down the connection problem, but you're not sure where to start. If you can't fix the problem yourself, you want to have the information to provide to a support engineer when you contact CA support. When a hub is offline, it can't be displayed in Admin Console. The first thing we'll do is see if a hub is running. Here, I have logged into the secondary hub with Remote Desktop. Click Start, All Programs, NIMSOFT Monitoring, and finally, NIMSOFT Service Controller. The NIMSOFT Service Controller lets you verify the hub and robot name, the robot version, and the CA UIM domain it is assigned to. You can use the NIMSOFT Service Controller to start and stop the hub. We see that the hub is running, so we can eliminate the first possible reason why the secondary hub cannot connect to the primary hub. Since the secondary hub is running, the next step is to use Remote Desktop to log into the primary hub. We'll do a few checks to see if the primary hub can communicate with the secondary hub across the network. To distinguish between the two hubs, I've used a red background for the primary hub. From the Start menu, open a command prompt. I enter ping and the fully qualified domain name of the secondary hub to see if the primary hub can contact the secondary hub. Note that the complete domain name is obscured for security. We see ping reports that the host name cannot be resolved. It's always a good idea to have host names defined in DNS or DHCP, but it's not required for CA UIM. If a host name can't be resolved with ping, note that fact so that you can tell your network administrator. Here we see that ping by IP address also fails. This is not conclusive evidence of a network problem, but it is something to take note of. We'll check for problems on the secondary hub later, so we'll keep this in mind. Telnet is another tool available to test for connectivity between two servers. It is more flexible than ping because we can specify the port number to connect to. CA UIM hubs and robots communicate on port 48,000 by default, so the command to test connectivity is telnet followed by the secondary hub IP address and port 48,000. Telnet failed to connect to port 48,000 on the secondary hub. We now have four valuable pieces of information. We know that the secondary hub is running. We know that a ping to the host name fails. We know that a ping to the IP address fails. And we know that telnet to the IP address on port 48,000 also fails. Knowing this information, it's time to log into the secondary hub again and check a few things. Telnet is a service that is not installed on Windows servers by default. I enter Telnet to see if it's installed on the secondary hub. We see a message that confirms Telnet is not installed on the secondary hub. So let's install Telnet. Open the Start menu and select the Control panel. Select Programs and Features, and then the Turn Windows Feature On or Off option. This opens the Server Manager. In the Server Manager, select Features, and then select Add Features. Here we see a list of features we can install. Scroll down and select the Telnet Client option. We don't need the Telnet server. Click Next, then Install, and after a few seconds, the Telnet client is installed. Now we'll return to the control panel and check the local Windows firewall settings. Sometimes, even when ports are open or a firewall is turned off, you still can't make a connection between the primary and secondary hubs. Checking the local firewall settings helps you verify that the local firewall is not blocking traffic and there is an issue that a network administrator should investigate. Let's check the status of the local firewall. Here we see that the firewall is on. We want to determine if the local firewall is preventing communication between the primary and secondary hubs. A quick way is to turn off the local firewall temporarily and access Admin Console to see if the primary hub becomes available. First, we'll select the Turn Windows Firewall On or Off option. Next, select the Turn Off Windows Firewall settings for the private and public network, and click OK. If a local firewall setting was blocking communication between the primary and secondary hubs, now that the firewall is off, you will be able to connect to this hub in Admin Console within a minute or two. Success! The secondary hub is now visible in Admin Console. Next, we'll fine-tune the firewall settings. Click Advanced Settings. We see that both the public and private local firewalls are off, but the domain level firewall is on. Because this configuration allows communication between the primary and secondary hubs, we know that the domain-level firewall is not causing the issue. So now we'll take a look at the local firewall settings. First, we'll check the inbound firewall rules. The primary hub interrogates the secondary hub by connecting on the default secondary hub port 48,000. If you change your controller port to something else, look for any inbound rules blocking that port on the secondary hub. Click Inbound Rules. Here we see the list of inbound rules. The rules with a green check mark are enabled to allow traffic. Rules with a grayed out check mark are disabled and not enforced, and those with a red circle are enabled to block traffic. As you might recall earlier in this video, ping was blocked when we tried to ping from the primary to the secondary hub. Ping is a utility that uses ICMP protocol to test for a response from another server. ICMP is also the same protocol used for file and printer sharing between servers. Notice that the blocking rule for the file and printer sharing has a red circle. This blocking rule prevents us from being able to ping this server. To enable ping, right-click the rule and select Disable. This will allow us to ping the server from the primary hub server. Now we need to look for a blocking rule for controller port 48,000. Here's the blocking rule set for port 48,000 inbound. Right-click this rule and select Disable. The checkmark is grayed out, which means this rule is now disabled. Click the back arrow to exit the inbound rules list. To see if your changes resolve the problem, we need to turn the firewall back on. Return to Windows Firewall in the Control panel and select Turn Windows Firewall on or off. Next, select the Turn on Windows Firewall option for the public and private networks. Verify that the Block All Incoming Connections, including those in the List of Allowed Programs options, are not selected. When these options are selected, all incoming connections are blocked. Click OK to save your changes. Changes to firewall settings take effect immediately. Success! We can see the secondary hub in Admin Console while the firewall is on. This video showed you how to test for connection problems between two hubs. Specifically, it showed you how to install a Telnet client, enable ping, and turn off inbound firewall rules that block traffic to the secondary hub on port 48,000. There are many ways to configure firewalls, including blocking traffic to or from specific applications, domains, subdomains, or individual servers. You can also have firewall issues caused by a setting on the primary hub as well. If after completing these troubleshooting steps, you still cannot connect to a hub in Admin Console, check the firewall settings on the primary hub or check with your network administrator. For more detailed information about CA Unified Infrastructure Management, click the information bubble in the top right corner to load the product page. From there, you can go to Product Documentation, visit the CA communities, or see the learning path.